My deskmate was famous for being a cold-hearted heartthrob, but he was a fierce fighter and never gave anyone a serious glance. I was always careful around him, afraid of accidentally setting him off. But one day, I came back to school after class, and the supposedly empty classroom was filled with the usual troublemakers. My cold deskmate was sitting right in the middle of them, looking smug. What's there to show off? She's not even as pretty as my family's own Clara. I stood at the door, not daring to interrupt his bragging, because I was Clara. Early in the morning, I got to class extra early to sneak in breakfast before my deskmate arrived. Otherwise, once he was there, I wouldn't even dare to speak loudly, let alone eat. My deskmate's name is Ethan Hayes. He's a top student from a good family, with a face so handsome it's infuriating. But he's notoriously cold. In the 2 years we've been deskmates, he has never once looked at me with a normal expression. He's genuinely terrifying. Whenever someone asked me to pass him a love letter, he would stop writing, his cold gaze fixing on me, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the desk as if to warn me, "You dare accept it?" Furthermore, he seems to have obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. His desk is always neater than mine, and I'm a girl. He gives me the feeling of a celestial god, not of the same world as us mere mortals, and he looks down on everyone. In short, I don't even dare to talk to him much. But before Ethan arrived, I had to quickly eat my egg. Just as I finished peeling the shell and took a bite, someone gently kicked my chair. A familiar but cold voice came from above me. "Move your chair." I instinctively looked up, half an egg still in my mouth. Ethan was standing beside me, hands in his pockets, his face devoid of expression. He sat on the inside, I sat on the outside. He was waiting for me to let him into his seat. I shot up in a panic, hastily making way for him. I didn't dare make him wait. But because I hadn't had time to swallow, I started to choke. I uncomfortably thumped my chest, but Ethan showed no reaction. He just calmly unscrewed his thermos and held it out in front of me. Without thinking, I unconsciously took it and took a gulp to wash the egg down, because I was genuinely afraid of choking to death and ending up on the news. Ethan's disdainful voice sounded in my ear. "You can even choke on an egg. It's over." He despises me now. I looked at him carefully, whispering an explanation. "I was afraid of making you wait, so I was eating a bit too fast." Ethan frowned slightly. I suddenly realized that I had just drunk from his thermos. Oh no, why did I drink from his thermos? I bit my lip, not knowing how to apologize. Seeing that Ethan was still waiting, I quickly stepped aside to let him into his seat. He didn't say anything, just walked in and sat down. I stood beside him, carefully wiping the thermos over and over again. "Are you disgusted with me?" Ethan suddenly spoke, making me jump. No, I'm just trying to wipe it clean for you." I waved my hands frantically. "I'm really not disgusted with you." Ethan said nothing, just looked at me silently. As expected, my deskmate was as cold as ever. I clutched the thermos, momentarily at a loss for what to do. Finally, I gritted my teeth and handed it to him. "Ethan, do you still want this?" I don't know if I was mistaken, but his gaze lingered on the mouth of the thermos for a few seconds. He looked down, his eyes darkening. After a long moment, he said in a low voice, "You can keep it." With that, he stopped looking at me and bent his head to flip through a thick physics textbook on his desk. I glanced at the cover. He was so brilliant, already studying college-level physics while I still couldn't grasp the high school material. "Ethan, I'm really sorry about today." "Don't worry, I'll buy you a new thermos to replace it." Ethan didn't look up, just coldly spat out 2 words. "No need." I stood there, frozen, filled with regret. It's over. I've definitely offended the school's top dog. I heard he's an incredible fighter. Last semester, some bullies tried to corner him, but he turned the tables on them, trapping them in an alley and beating them so badly they couldn't get up. I was so scared. For the entire next week, I lived in anxiety. I didn't even dare to give him the new thermos I'd bought, but it seemed Ethan didn't care about the incident at all. His attitude towards me was the same as always. Few words, no attention. I got through the week without incident. Over the weekend, A message from my best friend Lana popped up on my phone. Clara, save me. Are you free? Can you help me paint the school's promotional banner? I have a fever, please. I held my phone and thought for a moment. I wasn't too bad at drawing. So I immediately texted back. Sure, you just rest and get well. Leave it to me. The weather was beautiful that day, the sun not too harsh, and the wind rustling through the leaves made a pleasant sound. I brought my bag, planning to go to the classroom to sketch out a draft first. It was Saturday, so the classroom would surely be empty. I could draw in peace. But when I reached the classroom door, I froze. The room was packed with delinquent students, the kind that even the teachers couldn't control. They were chatting, debating which female celebrity was the prettiest. I knew these were all rich kids. They could probably meet celebrities in their own homes. And in the center of this group sat my cold deskmate, a smug look on his face. What's there to show off? She's not even as pretty as my family's own Clara. I stood frozen at the door, not daring to interrupt his bragging because I was Clara. A curious boy asked, Ethan, isn't Clara your deskmate? Ethan nonchalantly crossed his legs, an unlit cigarette clipped between his fingers, his expression incredibly arrogant. Yeah, my deskmate. She's very obedient. At that moment, I had the illusion that he was a completely different person from the cold guy I knew. If it weren't for his face, I would have thought I was seeing things. Suddenly, another boy glanced at the classroom door, then smirked mischievously, his voice lazy. Ethan, is Clara the girl who usually wears her hair in a small bun and carries a cream-colored backpack? Ethan's face grew even more smug, with a hint of pride. That's her. She looks very innocent. After saying that, as if remembering something, he kicked the other boy. How do you know that? I'm warning you. You'd better not get any ideas. The other boy dodged with a laugh, then raised his hand and pointed at the door where I was standing. Ethan, I wouldn't dare have any ideas about my future sister-in-law. But hey, I just saw her with my own eyes a second ago. Ethan replied nonchalantly. So? It's not like she could be standing right outside the door. The other boy's smirk grew wider. Who knows? Ethan suddenly stiffened. He stubbied out the cigarette, dropped his legs from the desk, and slowly turned his head. And his eyes met mine directly. 1 second, 2 seconds. The entire classroom was dead silent. No one said a word. The situation was incredibly awkward. Should I say something to ease the tension? I clutched the strap of my bag and squeaked. Hello, Ethan. Ethan seemed startled for a moment. Then he muttered something very softly. I listened intently and realized he was saying, It's over. I'm dead. My life is over. I stood frozen outside the door, not daring to move. But just a second later, Ethan immediately regained his cold expression, stood up, and left the classroom. But I saw it clearly. The tips of his ears were bright red. As he passed the boy from before, he swung his leg and kicked him, gritting his teeth. Your big mouth is going to be the death of me. You've ruined me. The boy held his backside and yelped, a look of innocence on his face. Ethan, I was just trying to help. You've been pretending to be cold for 2 years already. But Ethan didn't reply. He didn't even dare to look at me once. He, the renowned big boss of the school, was hastily fleeing like a defeated man. That evening, after I had finished painting the banner and returned home, lying in bed, I slowly came to a shocking realization. My deskmate wasn't actually cold at all. He was just pretending. And he had been pretending for 2 whole years. Why? I tossed and turned in bed, unable to figure it out. Could it be that he actually likes me? Impossible. I quickly denied it to myself. He and I were from different worlds. But I suddenly remembered that everyone in the classroom today were delinquent students, the kind that even teachers couldn't manage. Yet, they all seemed to respect and listen to Ethan. I stood up and leaned on the balcony railing, letting the night breeze blow through my hair. I looked up at the night sky, which was unusually full of stars. Involuntarily, I remembered the first time I met Ethan. It was the first day of 10th grade. The first day of high school was a brand new start, and everyone was excited about everything. I had my hair up in a high bun, wore clean white shoes, and had a strawberry-shaped clip in my hair. But my first day had a small mishap. That day, I walked into class 3 and stopped at a seat near the window. I chose to sit on the outside. After arranging my things, I even wiped down the inner desk. That was the spot I was saving for Lana. She was also in class 3, but just as I finished wiping, a large shadow fell over me. I looked up. In front of me was a chubby boy, dripping with sweat. Before I could even say, "Excuse me, this seat is taken," he had already thrown his backpack onto the inner desk. I frowned slightly and tried to explain politely, but he wouldn't listen. He aggressively told me to move, saying he wanted to sit there. He was tall and sweaty. I hesitated, unable to speak, my face flushing hot. I was afraid he would slap me across the room, but I also didn't want him to be my deskmate. So, even though my legs were trembling, I stood my ground, not moving an inch. He raised an eyebrow and asked me why I wouldn't move. I said in a small voice, "Excuse me, you won't fit." Seeing his increasingly annoyed expression, I immediately regretted it. Oh no, I've probably hurt his pride. My mind had only one thought: please God, someone come and save me. Anyone. And then, Ethan Hayes appeared. As the other boy and I were in a standoff, he walked in coolly, his face so handsome it could make both gods and men angry. With a flick of his wrist, thud, the chubby boy's backpack was thrown to the floor. A deep voice rang out. "The inner seat is mine. Get lost." The entire classroom's attention immediately turned to us. It was then that I vaguely realized he seemed to be very famous. I thought the chubby boy would argue with Ethan, but surprisingly, Ethan didn't even seem to register his existence. He just gave him an indifferent glance, his eyes emotionless. "What? You got a problem with that?" And the other boy fell silent, not daring to make a peep as he quietly left. Ethan's gaze landed on me. I dazedly stepped aside and watched him calmly sit down. I didn't dare to breathe too loudly because his presence was too intimidating. At 6'1", wearing a simple white t-shirt, he carried an air of arrogance and indifference that was even more frightening than the boy from before. "Clara, don't be scared. This will be your deskmate from now on. It's okay. He can't possibly punch you to death." I hesitated for a long time before finally bravely holding out my hand and saying in a small voice, "Hi, my name is Clara Jenkins." Ethan didn't look up, just took out a thick physics book. Just when I thought he wouldn't reply, his cold voice sounded. "Yeah, Ethan Hayes." I secretly wiped my sweat. "Help. He's so cold." Later, I found out that he was the top scorer in the entire city on the middle school entrance exam. Crestwood Prep was the best high school in the city. The students at this school were either from rich and powerful families or had outstanding academic achievements. I belonged to the second group. My family didn't have money, but my parents loved me very much. My dad was a factory worker, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I wanted my parents to have a better life in the future, so I studied as hard as I could, not daring to slack off for even a moment. The day I got into Crestwood, my parents were so happy they nearly set off fireworks to celebrate. They laughed and praised me, saying, "Our Clara is so brilliant," while planning to buy me new clothes, afraid I'd be looked down upon by my classmates. I smiled and told them, "It's not necessary. Lana has a lot of clothes she doesn't wear anymore. They're all still very new. I can just wear hers. If you really want to buy something, buy it for yourselves." "How long has it been since you bought new clothes?" My parents' eyes turned red with emotion. "Why is our daughter so considerate?" The tuition at Crestwood was very expensive. Luckily, I got a full scholarship, so I didn't have to worry about the cost. But in reality, Crestwood was a gathering place for many talented individuals. The academic achievements of the students here were not on the same level as my old middle school. Crestwood divided classes based on scores. I was placed in Class 3, while Class 2 was full of outstanding students, and Class 1 was for the geniuses among geniuses. That's why, to this day, I still can't understand why Ethan is in Class 3. He easily gets first place in the entire grade on every exam, as if he's just breezing through them. With his scores, he should be in Class 1. Ethan has been absent from class for 3 days. Ever since that awkward encounter, he hasn't shown up for 3 days. In these 3 days, I felt extremely unaccustomed to his absence. Although I was always tiptoeing around him, afraid of saying the wrong thing and offending the school's top dog, now that he wasn't here, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. Because as long as he was by my side, my thermos was always full of water. Even though Ethan was very cold, and almost no one in class dared to talk to him if I just frowned slightly at a difficult math problem, he would silently take my workbook to look at it. Ethan's hands are very beautiful, with distinct knuckles, long and slender yet strong. Sometimes when he was explaining a problem to me, I couldn't help but stare at his hands until I was dazed. Each time he would gently tap the back of my head, his cold voice sounding, "Focus!" He's very tall, but he always seems to have a habit of leaning down to hear me speak. Whenever that happened, my gaze would linger on the sharp line of his jaw. It was clearly a cold face, but at times it held a strange gentleness. He had been absent from class for 3 days. I wondered if it was because he was embarrassed after our encounter that day. I thought about the scene, when I caught him bragging, and how he got so flustered he ran away. Thinking of it, I couldn't help but sigh. He must have felt so ashamed that he didn't want to be my deskmate anymore. I subconsciously blamed myself. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone back to the classroom to paint the banner that day, and none of this would have happened. But reality proved that I had overthought things. On the 4th day, Ethan Hayes returned. It turned out he had been away participating in the National Physics Olympiad for the past 3 days and had easily won the championship. I let out a sigh of relief. As long as he wasn't avoiding me, it was fine. However, he was back, but my seat had been changed. Lana had broken her leg. When she called to tell me the news, her voice was choked with sobs. "Clara, I don't want to live anymore." I quickly asked, "What's wrong?" "Stop crying and tell me slowly." Lana spoke through her tears, word by word. I fell in the shower, but I fell so hard I broke a bone. I'm the unluckiest person in the world. Before, a bird flying by even managed to poop on my head. I could handle all of that. But how can I be so unlucky that right after my fever breaks, my leg breaks? I was about to go back to school. Now I have to stay home again. There's so much homework. I'll definitely fall behind. I asked worriedly, "Is your leg in a cast? Does it still hurt?" "It's in a cast. It doesn't hurt anymore, but I can barely walk." "It's okay. Just come to school. I'll sit with you. I can take care of you if you need anything." But will the big boss agree to let you switch seats? You two have been sitting together for 2 years. It's fine. Ethan hasn't been to class for 3 days anyway. I'll just talk to the teacher tomorrow. I don't have a deskmate right now anyway. Lana sniffled loudly, her voice filled with emotion. "Clara, you're the best friend in the world." The next day, Ethan Hayes returned to school to face an empty seat beside him, while I had moved to the other side of the classroom. When our eyes met, he didn't say a word, just stared at me with a dark, gloomy gaze, as deep as a bottomless abyss. If I wasn't mistaken, I could even see a flicker of killing intent in his eyes. Sitting next to me, Lana shivered slightly and whispered, "Clara, the way the big boss is looking at me, I feel like he wants to kill me." I gently patted her back to comfort her. "No way. You must be seeing things." For the following week, Lana and I were safe, but the look in Ethan's eyes grew more and more resentful. Once, Lana and I were getting hot water and happened to run into Ethan. He was with the same group of boys I had seen in the classroom the other day. It seemed he no longer cared about maintaining his good student image. Everyone at school was still buzzing about why a brilliant student like Ethan was hanging out with a group of delinquents. And what was even more surprising was that these guys seemed to be very afraid of him. As expected, a boss is still a boss. Ethan was walking in the front, one hand in his pocket, with a lazy and unrestrained air. We met face to face in the hallway. Our eyes met, and I immediately panicked and looked away, my heart pounding for no reason. Moreover, he seemed to have gotten even more handsome. Ethan's eyes darkened. Just as we were about to pass each other, he suddenly grabbed my arm. "Clara, are you scared of me?" His voice was low. I was a bit stunned. "I'm not scared. His eyes lingered on me, scanning me from head to toe, before he spoke again flatly. Not scared? Then why are you trembling? I tried to force a smile. It's just an involuntary reaction. I'm really not scared of you. Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly, his tone lazy. Then why did you switch seats? I was taken aback, then smiled sheepishly. Oh, no reason. It's just that Lana broke her leg, so I have to take care of her. Ethan looked at me, his voice very low. When are you moving back? It turned out he wanted me to come back and sit with him. I felt a subconscious flicker of joy, so subtle that I didn't even notice it myself. I told him seriously. Lana's leg still hasn't healed. Ethan let go of my arm, his eyes still filled with resentment. Is she that pathetic? Is she your only friend? Lana, standing beside me, heard this and wanted to retort, but didn't dare. I replied in a small voice. No, but she's my best friend. Ethan looked at me, his eyes reflecting only my image. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration, then glanced at Lana, his tone somewhat fierce. How much longer until your leg heals? Lana, terrified, clung to me, stammering. Boss, don't worry, it should be soon. Ethan sighed helplessly, then leaned down slightly to look directly at me, his eyes seeming to hold only me. I tensed up and asked him, Ethan, what is it? Ethan saw my nervousness, and the corner of his lip curled into a smile, his tone very serious. Deskmate, when she's better you have to come back. Got it? I looked into his eyes and gently nodded. Got it. A month later, Lana's cast came off. Ethan personally came over to move my seat back. He didn't say a word, just wore his cold expression as he walked to my desk and, under the curious gazes of everyone, silently helped me pack my books and school supplies, placing them neatly back on our old desk. I gently tugged on his sleeve and smiled. Ethan, thank you. Ethan awkwardly turned his head away, continuing to flip through the math problems I couldn't understand. After a long time, he finally spoke softly, his tone a bit stiff. It's good that you're back. My relationship with Ethan seemed to have changed, yet it was as if it hadn't changed at all. He maintained his cold demeanor as before, as if the person who sat among his friends bragging about me, proudly saying how pretty I was just a figment of my imagination. Because now, you could beat him to death and he wouldn't admit it. Moreover, now every time I looked up, I could catch his eyes on me. But when I caught him, he would hastily look away, the tips of his ears turning bright red. If anyone else saw this, they would surely not believe it. We still didn't talk much, because most of the time he was engrossed in writing something. Once I accidentally glanced over and saw the words 20 observation logs written on the page. An observation diary? Ethan writes in a diary? I don't believe it. I never thought I would meet Ethan's parents, because his parents were the heads of a large corporation with extremely high status and position. In fact, more than half of the buildings at Crestwood Prep were donated by them. I had heard a few classmates who had met Ethan's parents say that they were very strict and incredibly intimidating. I thought so too, because a large corporation like theirs surely couldn't be run by meek people. I thought that I probably wouldn't have the chance to meet them in this lifetime. But who would have thought they would appear at such a time? These past few days, I hadn't been able to focus on my studies at all because my dad had been fired. He shouldn't have been laid off, as he had worked at that factory for 20 years. But my family had crossed people we shouldn't have. Our house was in an old alley, with a vintage style, very suitable for opening a shop. A well-known local tycoon had set his sights on our house, wanting to buy it at a dirt cheap price. That day, a portly middle-aged man drove up and parked right in front of our house. With him was a woman in a fur coat, who looked at my family with utter contempt the moment she got out of the car. Are you the owners of this house? Why are you so dirt poor? Hurry up and move out. We want to buy this house. You people living here is just a waste of space. She was the tycoon's wife. My parents knew we couldn't afford to offend them and could only gently refuse. Madam, we're truly sorry. We don't know where we would go if we left here. Could you possibly let us stay for another year? As soon as we find a new place, we will sell it to you. The middle-aged woman's expression immediately changed, becoming fierce. I don't have time to wait. Get out of here right now. My mother frowned. You're being unreasonable. This is our house. Whether we sell it or not is our decision. You can't force someone to sell their home. The woman sneered, her tone mocking. People as poor as you deserve to live here. This neighborhood is going to be developed by a large corporation soon. You people are not worthy of being here. I couldn't hold back any longer and said sternly, Ma'am, please understand clearly this is our house. Her face darkened. You dare call me ma'am? You won't sell, right? Fine. Don't regret it. There will come a day when you'll be begging us to buy it. After that, she left in a rage. Not long after, my dad was laid off from the factory. He had worked there for 20 years, but just because that tycoon was a friend of the director, with a single word, my dad was fired. My family lost its only source of income. My dad looked like he had aged 10 years overnight, but when he saw me, he still forced a smile and ruffled my hair. Clara, don't worry. Dad will figure something out. You just need to focus on your studies. Tap. A pen gently tapped my head. I snapped out of my daze and came face to face with Ethan's handsome features. He frowned, leaning on his chin as he looked at me. Clara, you've been really distracted lately. I didn't dare to look him in the eye. He observed me silently, his tone certain. You're hiding something from me. I immediately denied it. No, I'm not. What could I possibly be hiding from you? He didn't ask further, just watched me silently, his eyes deep. Then he let out a cold, soft laugh, his eyes darkening even more. It's good if there's nothing. I thought the matter was over, but unexpectedly, the next day he showed up at my house. At that time, that couple had come again. This time, they even brought the director who had fired my dad. This time, my mother still politely invited them into the house, and they were still arrogant, making things difficult right away. For the sake of our livelihood, my mother endured it again and again. But I could only stand there helplessly, unable to do anything. I had clearly promised to give my parents a better life, but now I could only clench my fists to keep my composure. Just as I was about to lose it, someone suddenly pulled me back by my collar. I looked up in surprise. It was Ethan, a cold smile on his face. He chuckled softly. Clara, you're pretty good at hiding things. How dare you keep something this big from me? At that moment, the middle-aged woman was still eating sunflower seeds and spitting the shells all over the floor, her tone full of mockery. The tycoon was sitting on a chair, sipping tea, a triumphant look on his face. Old man Jenkins, if you had sold the house earlier, you wouldn't have lost your job. I gave you a chance, but you didn't appreciate it. You really are, thwack. Before he could finish his sentence, Ethan kicked him, sending him flying to the ground. The entire room fell silent. The tycoon screamed in shock. Who the hell are you? The middle-aged woman frantically ran to help her husband up, wailing, How dare you hit my husband? You're all dead. You're really done for this time. Ethan put his hands in his pockets, his tone indifferent. I know you're in a hurry, but just be calm. Don't be so impatient. Less than 10 minutes later, a long line of luxury cars appeared in front of my house. The lead luxury car had just stopped when an elegant man and a sophisticated woman got out. They were both incredibly good-looking. Before even reaching us, the woman took off her sunglasses, her voice ringing out. Who dares to bully my Clara? You have a death wish, don't you? As she spoke, she walked over to me, took a few steps back, and then took my hand, her eyes full of affection. So this is Clara? Oh my god, I finally get to meet you. You're so adorable. I've read all about you in that little brat Ethan's observation diary. You're even more well-behaved than he described. The moment I saw you, my heart just melted. She wanted to say more, but Ethan coughed. Mom, don't forget the main reason we're here. Oh, right. She patted her forehead, then patted my shoulder, her voice full of certainty. Clara, don't be scared. Auntie will get justice for you. After that, she strode over to where my parents were standing, frozen. The man who came with her gave me a slight nod, his eyes incredibly friendly. I whispered to Ethan, Who are they? His eyes became unnatural, and he slowly replied, My parents. My eyes widened. Ethan's parents? They were nothing like the rumors at all. Mrs. Cole, Ethan's mom, excitedly grabbed my parents' hands and greeted them cheerfully. "Hello, sir, ma'am." "Oh, wait, no. Hello, brother and sister. How are you?" My mother was still stunned, her whole body stiff as she awkwardly replied, Hello, ma'am." Mrs. Cole patted my mother's hand and smiled brightly. "Sister, don't worry. Leave everything here to me. I'll take care of it neatly for you." With that, she pushed my mother aside, and her expression immediately changed. Her sharp gaze fixed on the middle-aged couple. "You were trying to steal my Clara's house." Her voice was so cold that the temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. A moment ago, she was laughing and chatting happily with my parents, but now, the aura of a powerful businesswoman was fully revealed. The pressure radiating from her was so intense that no one dared to breathe too loudly. The middle-aged woman swallowed hard, her whole body rigid. She never imagined that the chairman of the Hayes Corporation would personally come to defend such a small family. If she had known, she wouldn't have dared to make a peep, not even if you gave her 10 times the courage. Because the corporation planning to develop this neighborhood was, in fact, the Hayes Corporation. Moreover, more than half of the city's economy was in the hands of this corporation. Her husband, who had just been kicked to the ground, was now pale and stiff, not daring to say a word. The factory director, who had fired my father, hastily pushed the couple aside, put on a fawning smile, and bowed. "Chairman Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, this is all just a misunderstanding." A complete misunderstanding. We weren't trying to seize the house, we were buying it. They wanted to sell it to us. Mrs. Hayes glanced at him, her face full of disgust, her voice dripping with contempt. "Who do you think you are to talk to me? You are not worthy. You're the director who fired my Clara's father, correct?" The factory director waved his hands frantically, stammering. No, Mr. Jenkins misunderstood. I didn't fire him. He can come back to work immediately tomorrow." Mrs. Hayes calmly smoothed her hair and accepted a folder of documents from her secretary. She flipped through a few pages and said nonchalantly, "Mr. Jenkins will, of course, be going to work. But you won't have to anymore. This factory now belongs to our corporation." Her words were met with dead silence. She gently patted my father's shoulder and pushed the folder into his hands, her voice as cheerful as if she were announcing a trivial matter. "Mr. Jenkins, starting tomorrow, you are the director of this factory." My father stood frozen, completely unable to believe what he was hearing. For all these years, his skills were the best in the factory. But because he had no connections, he was always suppressed. He had dedicated his entire life to his work, but had never gotten the position he deserved. And now the thing he had strived for his whole life without success had just fallen into his lap. So easily it was unbelievable. The middle-aged woman was still dazed, not understanding what had happened. When Mrs. Hayes looked at her, her tone lazy but filled with menace. "As for you two, I hear your family owns a livestock farm. Tomorrow, I'll send some excavators over to help you clear that place out." Upon hearing this, the faces of the three of them immediately turned deathly pale, their hands and feet trembling as they collapsed onto their chairs. A second ago, they were arrogantly berating my parents. The next, they were too scared to even breathe. The middle-aged woman was about to open her mouth to cry and beg, but a single, ice-cold glance from Mrs. Hayes was enough to have 2 security guards cover her mouth and drag all 3 of them outside. I stared at this scene, my mind still unable to react. I looked up at Ethan Hayes, my eyes shining. "Ethan." He turned to look at me. I blinked, my voice full of awe. "Your mom is so cool." After everything was settled, my parents enthusiastically invited Mr. and Mrs. Hayes to stay for dinner. They didn't refuse and even called to cancel all their appointments for the day, happily sitting down to eat with my family. During the meal, Mrs. Hayes gently stroked my head, her face full of affection, her voice soft. "Clara, who gave you your name? It's so beautiful, so poetic," I answered seriously. "My grandfather named me. He never went to school." She was startled and asked, "Why did your grandfather name you?" I calmly recounted the story I had never told anyone before. Because when I was born, my grandfather carried a large basket on his back and walked from the countryside to the city. bringing with him our family's only egg-laying hen. The distance from our village to the city takes over 2 hours by car, but my grandfather walked the entire way. At that time, my family was very poor. We didn't have a phone, and my grandfather didn't know which hospital we were in. He didn't know the way around the city, but he went to every single hospital to find us. His back was bent from a lifetime of farming, but he kept walking like that, just so he could see me once. My dad asked my grandfather to name me. He thought for a long time and finally said, "Let's name her Clara." Because he said, "I am the only and most precious treasure in the world." This was the first time I had ever told this story to anyone. The entire room suddenly fell silent. Mr. Hayes had tears in his eyes. Mrs. Hayes took out a handkerchief to dab her eyes. "Oh my God, that's so touching." Then she glared at Ethan, her tone full of disgust. "Oh no, her family cherishes her so much. How could you ever be worthy of her?" Ethan just smiled. Recently, my school held a qualifying math tournament. The winner would represent the school in the state-level competition. If they performed well, it would be a bright spot on their academic record, greatly benefiting their future. Because he was busy with another competition, Ethan didn't participate, and I quietly took first place. When everyone found out that I, a relatively unknown student, would be representing the school, they were disbelieving. They said I was just lucky, that I would surely embarrass the school at the competition, and that it would be better to give the opportunity to a student from Class 1 to bring glory to the school. There were so many negative comments that I began to doubt myself. Maybe I really was just lucky. But if it was just luck, then what were all those sleepless nights I spent studying? Thwack. A stack of books was thrown onto my desk by Ethan. He used his hand to hold the back of my neck, forcing me to meet his deep gaze. His breath brushed against my hair, light and warm. "Scared?" he asked. I looked at him, my voice carrying a hint of grievance. They all say I can't do it." Ethan's lips curled slightly, a hint of arrogance in his smile. But his words made me feel more reassured than ever before. "Don't be scared. It's just a stupid competition. If there's anything you don't know, I'll teach you. Just go and win first place to shut them up." He said it so casually, as if he was certain I could do it. I looked straight into his eyes, and after a long moment, I nodded firmly. "Okay, so I did what I do best. I studied with all my might, and Ethan became my personal tutor. In the midst of the intense study sessions, the school organized a basketball tournament to help students relieve stress. Ethan represented our class on the court. His face alone was enough to make countless girls go crazy, so when he played, the cheers nearly shook the gymnasium. He was normally so cold. This was a rare opportunity for the girls to scream and cheer for him without fear of being glared at. I stood in the crowd, holding a bottle of water, obediently watching him. When his eyes briefly swept over me, he, who always maintained an icy distance, suddenly broke into a wild smile, like a peacock showing off its most beautiful feathers. The girls around me screamed even louder. The game began. Ethan played with overwhelming dominance, leaving the opposing team with almost no way to fight back. I stood in the crowd, marveling. Ethan truly was an all-around genius. During halftime, many people rushed to give Ethan water, but he refused them all. I had already unscrewed the cap of my bottle, intending to walk over and give it to him. But before I could get there, a member of his team snatched the bottle from my hand. He was panting, his face flushed. "Thanks, you came just in time." I was about to say that the water wasn't for him, but seeing how exhausted he was, I couldn't bring myself to take it back. But just then, when I looked up, I met Ethan's gaze, a look of pure, unmistakable resentment. Before I could explain, the game continued. In the second half of the game, Ethan played with incredible ferocity. He intercepted almost every pass, giving the opposing team no chance at all, completely crushing them. Everyone could feel the simmering anger coming off him. Not just his opponents, but even his own teammates were shocked. One of them muttered, "What's wrong with Ethan? Why is he suddenly playing like he wants to eat someone alive?" Another wiped his sweat. "Who knows? He's always been cold. No one can guess what he's thinking, and no one dares to ask." The game ended. Ethan threw a beautiful three-pointer, extinguishing any last hope for the other team. When the crowd dispersed, I walked over to him. He was wearing jersey number 3, looking even more dazzling standing in the wind. "Ethan." He put his hands in his pockets, his voice a little grumpy.
"What? Heartless girl, giving water to someone else and not to me." I smiled, my eyes crinkling.
"Ethan, bend down a little." He narrowed his eyes, asking warily, "You think I'll bend down just because you tell me to?" I smiled even more brightly. "You'll definitely bend down." He muttered a curse under his breath, then obediently bent his head. "I really am no match for you." I took out a tissue and gently wiped the sweat from his forehead. Then, I leaned in close to his ear and said seriously, "Ethan, you played great today. That final three-pointer was beautiful. You're worthy of being my deskmate." My eyes were shining. Ethan shot up straight, the tips of his ears suddenly turning red. Afraid he was embarrassed, I prepared to leave. But just then, Ethan grabbed the hem of my shirt. His voice was a little stiff. "If you're going to praise me, then praise me a little more." I discovered that the closer it got to the day of the state math competition, the more people were talking behind my back. In their eyes, I was too ordinary to be representing the entire school. They felt I was completely unworthy. Just before the competition, on a Monday morning at the weekly school assembly, Ethan, as the top student in our grade, stood on the stage, his gaze deep. The school grounds, which had been noisy, fell silent the moment he stepped up to the podium. Everyone was stunned. A person who always refused to give speeches, famous for being cold and distant, had suddenly agreed to speak on stage today. The students all perked up their ears to listen. Even the principal couldn't hide his satisfaction, his eyes full of anticipation. Everyone's eyes were focused, watching Ethan's every move. He gently tapped his finger on the microphone, his deep and calm voice ringing out. "Since everyone is here today, I'll say a few words." I once read a line by Eileen Chang. "Outside, the wind and rain are clamorous. All over the mountains and hills is today. So, Clara Jenkins," he suddenly paused. I stood below the stage, among hundreds of students, and suddenly heard my own name coming from the microphone. My heart skipped a beat. I looked up, and at that exact moment my eyes met his on the stage. The corner of Ethan's lips curled up slightly, his eyes full of confidence. "Whatever other people say, you just have to persist in what you believe is right. Whatever you want to do, just do it. Life is very short, but it has countless important moments. I hope that in the most brilliant years of your youth, you can give it your all and leave no regrets." He paused for a second, then his voice became deeper, carrying a hint of a smile. "As for me, everyone always says I'm arrogant, but I will forever bow my head for you." As his words ended, the school grounds fell into absolute silence. Even the principal was stunned. The teachers behind him had their mouths agape. Clearly no one had expected Ethan's speech to turn into such a public display of support. For a moment, no one spoke. Then someone in the crowd shouted, "Damn, Ethan is so badass." The entire school grounds immediately erupted. Oh my god. Did he just confess his love? Heavens, is this still the ice-cold Ethan I know? Isn't Clara Jenkins the one participating in the math competition? If the big boss has so much faith in her, she must be no ordinary person. I thought today would be a serious speech. Who would have thought the big boss would turn it into a public love confession? I was wondering why Ethan suddenly agreed to speak at the assembly. Turns out he's a warrior for love. Oh my god. I have truly witnessed the boss descend from the heavens. I stood in the middle of the school grounds, my hand over my chest. My heart was beating so fast it felt like it was about to jump out. The four directions were filled with noise, but my ears felt as if they were blocked. All I could hear was the sound of my own heart. He stood on the stage, his usually cold face now carrying a gentle smile. That smile was like sunshine in the middle of a cold winter, warm and brilliant. I had a feeling. Oh no, I think I've really fallen for him. I don't know when it started. Maybe it was when he gave me his thermos when I was choking. Maybe it was when he took my math problems and patiently explained them. Maybe it was when he silently filled my thermos with water without saying a word. Maybe it was when I accidentally saw the page where he had written 20 observation logs. But maybe it was this very moment. Because the look in his eyes had long been carved into my heart. I stood in the middle of the crowd but could only see him. Ethan Hayes, I've really fallen for you. That night, after packing my luggage, I stood on the balcony, letting the night wind blow on my face, trying to clear my head a little. After much hesitation, I finally dialed a number.
Hello, deskmate. Ethan's voice came from the other end of the line, carrying a hint of a smile, completely different from his usual coldness. I softly called out, Ethan.
Yeah, I'm here. I heard the sound of a lighter from the other end. He was probably lighting a cigarette. I always knew he smoked, because he always had a faint smell of tobacco on him. But he never smoked when he was with me.
I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm, then said with certainty, I've thought about it very carefully.
I want to make an important decision. His voice was a little hoarse,
as if he was holding a cigarette between his lips, and he asked lazily, Go on.
I clutched the phone tightly, then resolutely said, word by word, if I win first place this time, I will confess to you.
The other end of the line suddenly went silent.
I nervously clutched the hem of my shirt, not knowing what he was thinking. Suddenly, I heard a sharp TSSS sound. It seemed he had just burned himself.
Immediately after, his slightly trembling voice came through the phone.
Damn it!
I frowned, worriedly asking, What's wrong? He let out a soft breath, his voice raspy and carrying a rare hint of grievance.
It's nothing. I was just so happy I burned my hand with the cigarette. I couldn't help but laugh, and my mood became much lighter. You believe in me that much? What if I don't win first place?
Ethan chuckled softly, his tone incredibly firm. Deskmate, you're the student I taught. You will definitely win first place. Hearing those words, I suddenly felt my whole body fill with energy. I don't know why, but he always had a way of making me believe I could do it.
I took a deep breath and broke into a radiant smile.
Okay, I'll bring home first place. And Ethan and I got together.
I am very good at seizing glory. Not only did I win first place, but I used my ability to silence all those who had once looked down on me. Mrs. Hayes fed me a strawberry while smiling proudly.
Our Clara truly has a bright future. It was her first time competing, and at the state level no less, yet she took first place.
Here, treasure. Have another strawberry. I shyly opened my mouth while my own mother, giving me a massage, smiled benevolently.
It's also thanks to young Ethan's good teaching that our Clara has improved so quickly. Ethan sat beside me, occasionally breaking into a foolish grin. This had been going on since the day we got together. That day, Ethan's eyes were filled with emotion as he looked at me, as if he was restraining something powerful. He looked at me, his tone more serious than ever.
Clara, if you're with me, we can never break up. I like to show off, and I get jealous.
Do you still want to be with me? I looked into his eyes and nodded gently. Ethan Hayes, I like you. In that moment, he was so overjoyed he spun around on the spot. Then he suddenly bent down, slipped his arms under my legs, and lifted me up like a child, completely ignoring the stunned looks of everyone around us. He grinned mischievously, winking. Let's just get married now. I'm afraid of heights and frantically clung to his neck. There's no need to be in such a hurry. From that day on, Ethan started smiling foolishly countless times. Our classmates, not knowing the truth, started to rumor that the school's top dog had studied himself into madness.
Everyone said, it's just the Esoteus.
There's no need to stress out that much. The college entrance exams approached, the final hurdle for all seniors. No one saw it as an end, but as the beginning of a new journey. Everyone poured their energy into studying, and I was no exception. Ethan stayed with me in the classroom until late every night, reviewing with me until the very last moment. As a result, I did very well. Although I didn't get into Ethan's university, I was accepted into a prestigious top-tier school. Luckily, we were still in the same city. On my college move-in day, Ethan personally drove me. He drove his flashy supercar, circling the campus over and over again, as if afraid people wouldn't know I was his girlfriend. If the dorm era hadn't stopped him, he probably would have charged right into the women's dorm to help me make my bed. Being blocked at the door, his face immediately fell. What kind of stupid school is this? They don't even let you into the girls' dorms. 4 years of college passed in the blink of an eye. After graduation, we entered the professional world, each pursuing our own field. A few years later, we got married. At the age of 27, Ethan was already firmly seated at the top of his industry. The once arrogant and untamable man had become a famous smiling tiger in the business world. Everyone was terrified of the knife hidden behind his smile. At a meeting on the top floor of the corporation, Ethan sat at the head of the table, his fingers tapping lazily on the surface. But all the senior executives in the room were sweating, none daring to breathe too loudly. They knew from experience that this was a sign the young boss was about to lose his temper. Lana's husband was also in the meeting. In a moment of desperation, he secretly texted his wife for help. At that time, I was getting my nails done with Lana. Seeing her pitiful expression, I understood completely and took out my phone to make a call. The moment the call connected, a familiar ringtone suddenly echoed through the dead silent meeting room. The senior executives collectively let out a sigh of relief. They were all too familiar with this ringtone. It was like a ray of salvation in hell. Ethan looked down at his phone screen. He was an incredibly cold person, yet the caller ID was saved as my adorable darling. He smirked slightly, stood up, his voice deep and gentle. "Hello?" I called out sweetly. "Honey, can you come pick me up? I'm done with my manicure." Ethan's gaze automatically softened, the terrifying aura from a moment ago vanishing without a trace. The corners of his lips curled up, his voice both firm and gentle. "Okay, stay right there. I'm on my way." The meeting was over. I flipped through my old high school photos. My memory always lingered on the time just before the college exams. It was a normal afternoon, the sun setting in the west, casting a sunset glow through the window. In the quiet classroom, there was only the sound of me diligently doing my homework, while Ethan quietly read a book beside me. He leaned back in his chair, one hand holding the book, the other resting unconsciously on the back of my chair, his fingers occasionally tapping lightly on the frame. I stopped writing, stretched, and unconsciously poked my cheek with the end of my pen. "Ethan?" I called him softly. He answered patiently, "What is it? Do you know the meaning of the hibiscus flower?" Before I let him answer, I continued on my own. "It's gentle persistence." Ethan looked at me and smiled softly. "I know." He gently massaged my neck, his eyes seeming to hold the entire warm sunset behind him. I whispered in my heart, "Ethan, my love for you is like the hibiscus flower. No matter what tomorrow brings, I will still love you, gently and persistently." A short epilogue. On the first day of school at Crestwood Preparatory Academy, the road was packed with cars dropping off new students. In the crowd, 2 tall boys stood out. "Ethan, why did you come to high school? Didn't you already finish all this material in elementary school?" Ethan slung his bag over one shoulder, chewing gum, his gaze lazily sweeping over the new students. He smirked. "I was just planning to come for a few days, then ace an exam to deal with my family and bounce. Forcing me to study 3 years of high school? No way. I'm not wasting my life like that." That's what I thought. High school is a piece of cake for you. How could you stand to take it seriously? The two of them chatted as they walked through the hallway. Passing by Class 1-1, Ethan's steps suddenly halted. In a seat near the window, a small girl was standing quietly, a dreamy look on her face. Ethan frowned, about to walk past, but then he overheard her. "It's over. I drank from someone else's thermos again." The girl frowned, mumbling to herself in a fluster. Just then, she looked up and came face to face with a fat, sweaty boy standing in front of her desk. The boy slammed his backpack onto the inner seat, his tone aggressive. "Do you know who I am? How dare you refuse me? It's your honor to be my desk mate." The girl pressed her lips together, her small face flushing red, but she stood her ground firmly, refusing to yield the seat. The fat boy raised his eyebrows, trying to push past, but she blocked him. She had her hair up in a messy bun, her round eyes dark and clear. Her whole frame was small and soft. She probably didn't even realize it herself, but right now she looked like a little cat with all its fur puffed up, glaring at the person in front of her. The fat boy wiped his sweat, a confused look on his face. "Why won't you let me in?" The girl whispered softly, her voice like cotton. "It's too crowded, you won't fit." At that moment, Ethan, standing outside the door, was stunned. His gaze was fixed on the girl, motionless. In his mind, there was only one thought. Damn it. Why is she so adorable? So tiny, so cute I could die. Well, it's over. I have to go to high school now. Thinking this, he unconsciously walked into class 11 to 3, his feet completely out of his control. His long, slender hand shot out, and with a thud, the backpack the fat boy had placed on the chair was thrown to the floor. Ethan said coldly, "I want to sit here. Get lost." The fat boy was furious. "Are you crazy? I was here first. Who are you anyway?" Ethan nonchalantly swept his eyes over him, his voice lazy and cold. "What? Got a problem?" The fat boy took a good look at his face, immediately broke into a sweat, and stammered, "No. No problem." He snatched his backpack and ran away. Ethan casually sat down in the inner seat. The small girl standing beside him hesitated for a long time before timidly holding out her hand, her voice a little tense. "Hi, my name is Clara Jenkins." He didn't shake her hand, just took a very long physics book out of his bag, maintaining his cold expression, pretending to be indifferent. "Yeah, Ethan Hayes." The friend who had come with Ethan watched the whole process, his mouth agape. He was about to enter the classroom, but the moment he stepped through the door, a sharp glance from Ethan made him immediately retract his foot. He took out his phone and texted Ethan. "Ethan, you're in the wrong class. You're in class 11 to 1, not 11 to 3. Get out of there. It's embarrassing." Ethan replied with just 2 words. "Get lost." His friend continued to text. "Ethan, what's wrong with you?" Ethan replied, his expression calm. "Dad here is in love."